Hello po, welcome to this space where I'm interviewing teachers and practitioners of Ashtanga Yoga to get to know the best of this beautiful lineage. Today I'm here with my teacher Scott Johnson. We are in Alsace, Portugal, during a week of practice and philosophy exploring the past, present and the future of Ashtanga Yoga. Scott, thank you for your time, for Sikumat.
Anticipated.
I would like to start by that, following up the talks we have been having this week, and it's like, what would be the modern look of practitioner of Ashtanga Yoga and how you see it has evolved through the years?
I think the modern practitioner is more engaged with the practice themselves, is more interested in how the experience of yoga, how the experience of Ashtanga yoga is for them, rather than in how it's particularly forced on them. One thing that's evolved over the last maybe even 10 years, it's been this more openness to explore practice with a less rigid side to it. Meaning we still follow the sequence, but there's not that rigidity to have to perform something so well to be able to really well. How can we explore the postures? How will we relax that and agree rather than kind of force and push? There's been more over the last number of years in openness that people have adapted to. And for me, I think it was because I've been practicing for 15 years, and I just fancied I needed something a little bit different. And as I study mindfulness, and the best I say mindfulness, I took some of the mindfulness principles and placed them on top of what I showed the yoga practice. Where am I tensing? Where am I pushing? Where am I holding? What can I let go of? Where do I really need? Or should I just chill out today? You had 100 things like it gave me a far more open perspective about what I was actually doing. Thinking about Ashtanga yoga. 73 was when Daily Winds went. So we've been practicing like 50 years. The rest of us have been practicing 50 years. So we're now 50 years into this experiment.
Yeah.
It's about listening. And I think for me over the last number of years, that's become more prominent. How do we listen deeper to what the practice is telling us about our body?
And you can tell us a little bit about how you started Ashtanga this decade back or not in a decade back, and how, if you have to receive these teachings from John Scottish as TCP actually share, and how that Western approach to the practice either can call it the way he brought to Mysore shaped the way you see the practice now.
I started Ashtanga yoga beginning of 2002, and I've been practicing yoga for about maybe 3 years consistently. But then when I first went to Ashtanga yoga class and I came out, I knew that was I knew that's what you do. Literally, it's a life-changing moment when I went in and I came out a different person. And within 6 months, I had John Sprock's book. I went to study. I went to Oxford in the UK, and he was there. That was in the summer of 2002. Immediately when I went into workshop, I'd never been to an event anything like it, and I met people like that. Ever met a man like him, and it was just all really consuming. Like I found something here, like I really need mine, and I found a person who I think I need to mind that with, and I think that's what this is really what a teacher does. A teacher does is like, for a period of time, you get to explore a practice or your life in relationship with someone else. And I met John Scott, who I realized that he was someone who could have an influence on the way I saw myself. And I knew I couldn't go to study in Mysore because I had a younger family. But I also knew I meant it. If I was going to teach this or practice it, I would have had the best version of practice I could through a Western lens. Meaning, Pattabhi Joyce and Sharat, they'd say Mysore, and everyone goes to Mysore, and everyone from there that goes away from Mysore shares what they learn. By the time of the 80s, the 90s, there was a really fruitful group of people who came out from study Joyce, realized that they needed to offer it to more open perspective, and so framed it within a context that they understood, which was people were able to receive it. And I think John Spivers and his wife at time, you see, were two most amazing teachers who are able to take that what was happening in Mysore and make it available to a group of people who lived in the Western context. So it's just like, when you go to Mysore, you go study, you practice in the morning, and then you go to the coconut stand. And from the rest of the day, you either go chant or say Sanskrit. The rest of us, when we're in a home, we practice in the morning and get all of the chores, jobs, anything to do in the rest of the day. So there's a different, when you're meeting people with the practice, and then they have stuff to do. I think you have to meet it and give people a different way of understanding it in relationship to their others, and showing me how I practice in the way it was like relative to my particular circumstances, which was like married with 3 young children. It was really profound, and I thought to myself, this power, when I realized I wanted to teach, I said, this is the only way I teach. I'm going to be able to see how we can look at someone and see the needs of the person in relationship to the practice and work with them to be able to develop something that's sustainable and yet still inspiring. So when I opened Still went up by Shiobashar Bridge in 2009, it was with Oscar, who was one of my good friends and business partner at the time when we set out together. And we basically set it up from that context. So both our teachers, this is how they want to teach. The Meister Scholar were from this lens. My practice and my friendship and my working with John lasted until 2017. Like you married girl for the UK. So it's super fruitful. So that's why I say mindfulness had a teacher called Michael Stone. He was a student of Richard Freeman, and he was a Buddhist teacher. He used to have a psychologist, and he was a Shakti yoga practitioner. He had this really beautiful way of talking about how to create, how to really practices the world. He had this really way of understanding the idea of transcendence is not vertical, it's horizontal. We don't rise, neglect. So the idea of transcendent is like you don't kind of leave everything, you become more immersive in it. You become more responsive, dependent, related to it, and the users. And I love that. I really love that.
So I think your experience and these teachers that have to this approach that speaks to independence, sovereign duty, and people is claiming the authority of their bodies more than the teacher in the authority. It makes me think about where did you draw the line in terms of keeping the lineage? If you think about what we call nowadays Ashtanga-based practices like yoga or, making niche piece like Gladiator do. What do you think about these Ashtanga-based practices?
Right from the beginning of Ashtanga, you had people take it and say, well, I don't like this, but I want to do this with it. Right at the beginning, Beryl in the Birch study with Sahari Joyce in the sedatives. First book was outside the outside of the Sahari Joyce and called it Pali Yoga. And that caused the little ripple. Go over here, humility of like studying in the Sahari Joyce. And then everyone's taken it and said, this is a really good foundation to be able to now explore. I'm going to explore this in this way. And even now, I speak after speaking to my friend Thailand, who set up the Black Lotus. And he's done it because there's something he wants to explore in relationship to the Vinyasa system. Now, he's done it really beautifully because he's created a system where you can do it in a Mysore style. And that's the beautiful thing, like the Ashtanga always had is like it was the Mysore style. Maybe even have a Ashtanga based baskets where they start off with certain things of it. But then as soon as you start to veer off in any direction, we would take it away from the traditional sequence, suddenly we're into new territory. When we talk about Ashtanga, we talk about the system of the Yasa, Mysore style approach, that's primary series, intermediate series, advanced practice. And I think that's for Ashtanga. The most important thing is you don't confuse people. Ty's done it really beautifully. He's not confusing me by saying, I used to teach Ashtanga yoga, no one teaches Bhagavad. I'm all for more Mysore style environments where you can have a one-to-one relationship with the teacher. I'm all for kind of creating independence for people in whatever way that's helpful, because that's, to me, what the practice is about.
What have you found to these years of teaching about the most effective way of planting that seed in the student? Meaning that you were talking the other day about lens, no? The lens associated of practice. So we know that practice works for people depending on what they put in the practice. But sometimes when they are kind of in the rigidity of the practice, they're missing a point of being themselves, right? So what have you found as a teacher when people just basically are used probably to other styles of yoga, or somebody's doing something in the front and now it's up to you what you do? How it's been this conversation with the students? What's a good way to do it?
It's really important, and people understand why they were doing it. Why study yoga? And as a teacher, when I'm looking around, why again? I don't ever make anyone wrong. I always ask why. If I understand their why, and then I encourage them through that lens. John told me something, so many few things over the years, but one of the most amazing things he said was, you have to teach the same thing to 1,000 different people, 1,000 different ways. And when you get someone to move a little bit differently, or maybe get them to kind of soften, which we're talking about, you'll see people relax. And when people relax, that's where the juice of the practice comes up. In 2012, Oscar died, passed away. And that was a real what he had. So I spoke a lot about this before, but I had to move the community through grief. As someone so vibrant, so full of life, like passing away so young, it's like, what are we doing here? What you were able to do is influence all the different people that come right at the beginning of the day. There's always been the power of Ashtanga. They're doing this right at the beginning of the day, so then the day happens as a response to this deep inquiry.
Yeah, I want to say that I feel like you're very detailed, and I really appreciate that you take each practitioner in its hierarchies, in its. So I get that from you, and I'm wondering also, because you are very, very pro collaboration, Ashtanga United Sperianato for a Hitler Unity in Thailand. And it's interesting also how, despite what we think, the different styles can really flow in a space with different practitioners that come from all the few what types of people have practiced, but often different contexts. And I just wanna know the importance of collaboration, and can give us some words about that within the Ashtanga community, in spite of the style of the teachers.
From about 10, 11, 12 years ago, I started to collaborate and have collaborations to bring people together. I remember, like, when I was, for my 40th birthday in 2013, the only thing I wanted to do was have John and Lucy teach us still one. So I could, this event, it was like John and Lucy. There was Liz Lark, who's a really beautiful vinyasa teacher. She used to teach Ashtanga. She comes from Derrick Island lineage. We did chanting. We had philosophy Guru Anshul Prime, who's a beautiful bhakti teacher. And then we did chanting with this curtain thing. It's like, and I put this event together, and it was really beautiful. It was like this kind of like really lovely thing. And I just thought, there's this kind of side that we could explore. The following year, I did another one. John didn't come, but I connected with Greg Nardi and Kia Nadwa. The collaborative approach was like, we were teaching differently, but we also understood the people, that we came together as a whole. But right from now, I realized the power in collaborating with like-minded teachers and who could kind of like merge, not take over. When you're a teacher yourself and you're working with colleagues, you're always learning, and you're practicing with people, you're always learning. But also it's really beautiful for the students to see as well, to see teachers who are working together. And it's the same, you know, myself and work with Petri. If you know, I realise that we have similar ideas, but working together, that we can like maybe offer different perspectives in the room is something that's similar, and not, you know, hopefully people don't feel that there's like two different things going on. It has to feel like there's a synergy in the room. And so I love that, because it kind of, it keeps the teachers humble, and it gives the students and the practitioners, they're inspired because they're seeing the benefit of like two people learning from each other, and as well as giving and trying to collaborate in a really way.
It's fun for us, and in a way it also keep us humble in the way that we might use to a certain teacher or certain ways to do things, and then when we explore the body in a different way, then to a different adjustment, we're like, oh, okay, there was a way, but there is more ways, and then we add more labors and more curiosity, and then we bring even more novelty to the practice, kind of like playing against the idea that Ashtanga Portugal Vietnam sold something last year, and especially when teachers bring these new perspectives.
These wider perspectives are like,
Yeah.
you know, what we're also trying to do is see if we can break away from this hierarchical.
Yeah.
The thing about this hierarchy of being a teacher and a junior, we're trying to be more like, if we're seen to be more open and we like play for ourselves, being more that we're learning for each other, then it feels like there was more, I don't know, alive. Whether the Mysore wants to be vibrant, wants to be alive, it's full of people, spirited people doing something very, you know, powerful for themselves. And I've always like been so deeply moved by the people coming or wanting to go through that process. You know, it's the hardest thing to set up is a Mysore. The collaborative approach is trying to see that even the teachers that are there, and how no matter who they are or how many they are part of this learning and evolution process. So I think for me, it's been very profound. And for the people, the teachers who come, my daily 20th last year was over the learning about the time that we had. And yeah.
So last but not least, I want you to tell us a bit about your project of People of Yoga and what have you do through these people that are opening your heart to you and sharing them intimate experiences. And I guess that was some inspiration to you with different things.
Still on my Audio podcast in 2018. I first interviewed a job, which we did in Portugal in 2017. I wasn't very insistent with it because it's super busy, but like during the pandemic, suddenly loads of people started doing podcasts, and I'm like, oh, you're all kind of having a nice time. They always started speaking to everyone else, and they were like, which is really brave to people. But I realised there was something else I wanted to do, and it was working with one of my students called Roshni, and she lives in Glasgow, and I wanted her, she's partially sighted, and I wanted, she's got such a beautiful voice, but such a beautiful soul, and I wanted to interview her from the podcast. I said to Roshni, I think people need to see it. So she was the reason why I started doing People of Yoga films. It did become podcasting, or became films to do for YouTube. And then I just suddenly thought, it's really powerful, because I realized on my travels and teaching over the years, I've met just so many people who have incredible stories about how yoga has helped them, as well as looking to like the more, you know, the David Swenson and Petri and Kathy, the more like the people who've been doing it for a long time, who've already gone on the circuit of conversations or podcasts, that thought I want to have more people, but what I don't want to do is make anyone more important than anyone else. So the first one was with Charlie, who's a beautiful student of mine from Amsterdam, and he was only been practicing for a year, and he told me how he was autistic and how practicing yoga made him more empathetic. And that, it's always like that, like a so exciting. Because this is the way we talk about people. We talk about, you're not talking about these seniors. So we want to, these people have done it, gone down a rabbit hole. But everyone practices, everyone's got a story, and everyone's can tell us about how they moved. And so the Deep Blue Yoga project started as a film project for YouTube, and there's about 32 on the Still Project, the London's YouTube channel. Whenever I travel, I always have my camera with me, my lights with me, and always my cell. So just in case, at least, if I go, can I to the film with you? And yeah, sure. And then we'll have this deep and moving conversation about how yoga is helping change them. And what it means is I can talk to anyone. So this is why people of yoga is about people. And it's also just more recently turned into a picture image project as well, because I realised I enjoy, as much as I enjoy filming, I enjoy taking photographs. And I'm gonna invite them on because maybe I've worked with them over my story or weekend workshop or some time, and we've had a connection, and they told me about how it's impacted me in a really living way. Our job as interviewers is to make the other person beautiful, right? And so we do that for film, we do that for conversations, we do that for images. And so they'll boom that, well, I'll take this image and say, look, it's amazing. Oh God, yeah, really cool. And say, right now, here is the image. You sit with that, and then write some words about how yoga has moved you, and then what you want to tell someone else about the bath. And then people start sending me these really powerful and beautiful testimonies. It's my privilege to be able to stand in front of a room and offer some kind of guidance that helps people to move through something in their lives. And so I realized that that's what I wanted to record. I wanted to record the people that I met and the courage that they've shown to use something with yoga to be able to do deep effects of change in their lives. I spoke to Marita, who are most moving ones, and she spoke about straight away within 5 minutes, 2 minutes, she told us how she used to be a heroin addict. She was a heroin addict while she had baby. And yet, and she was the lowest of low. And then, she went to nursing, she met Alex Study, and his program in Ashtanga yoga changed her life. And now she's in recovery, she's got this beautiful connection with her kids. And I saw her last month, and I remember turning off the camera and crying with her. So this for me is the most powerful part of it. We were able to stand here and give someone the perspective about what this means. Yeah. So yeah, Gabriel Yoga project's deep personal, it's also creative. I realized this ATO. It's a creative study as well, photography, the way, which is a deep part of who I am. Sorry?
That's a beautiful theory, and that you have beautiful answers, and yes, I see if you want to apply to you can ask yourself, your reference from your life, and talk to you, have a beautiful conversation also. So Scott, thank you so much for your time. It's been beautiful to know you. Your first single and up here, and with makeup practice very amazing too. I hope you continue listening to this interviews and inspire you for your practice or for your sharing of yoga, because you don't have to be a teacher to share yoga. Realize from within, and I'm sure it has an impact around you from your community. Thank you, Papi.
You did pose.